Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Look Forward. I'm your host, Jay. I'm here with my co-host, Brad.
Coming to you live, not from a prison cell, because I did not try to overthrow the government on January 6, 2021.
Well, you missed an opportunity. They're just handing out cells. Like everybody gets, they're like Oprah during her, like her holiday shows. Look, a lot to talk about this week, but obviously you can tell for folks listening on audio, if you heard crab rave, you know that just is our signal that bad things have happened to people who deserve it. It's normally for when people die that we're happy about, but sometimes it's just for dummies going to prison for Donald Trump.
Yep.
So let's get right into it. Right off the bat, Proud Boys received significant sentences for their roles in the January 6th insurrection. So first off, two former leaders of the far-right group, Proud Boys, Joseph Biggs and what's the other? Pizzola, I believe. They both got pretty significant sentences. Or excuse me, I apologize. Joseph Biggs and Zachary Rell. Biggs got 17 years as an organizer and 15 years for Zachary Rell. Excuse me. They were the second and third longest sentences handed down as of yet for January 6th. That was until former chairman Enrique Tarrio got hit with 22 years as the general to all the soldiers of the Proud Boys, as he was sort of calling the shots from his cell phone in a hotel in Baltimore during January 6th. Brad, on a scale of they deserve this to I hope they never see the light of day, how excited are you for this news?
It's pretty cool. It's always fun to see the criminal justice system working as it should instead of disproportionately impacting minorities who can't afford decent legal representation. You could argue that they actually under-sentenced them. Notably, the judge in the case did not adhere to the terrorism kicker that prosecutors had asked to be considered for sentencing, because the judge alleged that somehow this did not rise to the level of terrorism as it's traditionally been defined in handing down that sentence.
Yeah,
which I think is a little odd.
It is. The judge's argument, I believe, was that this did not count as domestic terrorism, and reference like, well, they didn't blow up a building. Like
that was their whole point. It's like, well, no one really died, so can it truly be terrorism? And to which I say, it can. Like, go look at what terrorism means.
Right. This is not difficult to understand.
Yeah, it's not like it's not like it requires people to die for it to be terrorism. So you could argue that a lot of these defendants got off light, and one of the reasons that Tarrio, was sentenced heavier, A, he was like the ringleader, and B, he was like the least remorseful of all of them. Like at least the other ones tried to like pretend to be remorseful.
Yeah.
And then immediately Pizzola famously like was crying like a bitch in the courtroom, and then after his sentence, like on the way out the door, he like apparently raised his fist in the air and was like, Trump won and shit like that. So it's like,
I wish you could come back and be like, oh, I heard you were talking shit. Yeah, double. Now what happened? Like, fuck.
That's the talking shit rider. 5 more years for talking shit.
Yeah, exactly. It's a 5-yard penalty.
So it's cool. Like Enrique Tarrio is going to be in federal prison until he's in his late 50s at a minimum. So that's that's pretty nifty. However, unfortunately, this is not going to deter, I don't think, anybody, because and especially like my biggest concern is like if Trump somehow is able to win election, like these guys are completely confident that he's going to pardon them, and you know what? They're probably right.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think fucking Trump in the YOLO term is going to just be like, fuck it, like whatever.
I think that Trump is way more likely to pardon people like John Eastman and sort of the other like big political appointees. I don't think that he gives a fuck about the Proud Boys. I don't think so. And it's not like I think that he's like malicious about it. Like, yeah, fuck those guys. I don't think he gives a shit. Like, it would really have to be a thing where if he thought that it might affect him negatively with Republicans, then I think he'd be like, who gives a shit? Fuck those guys, right? Like, he would justify like, well, he shouldn't have hit a cop, right? Like, he would have figured out some like bullshit thing. But I think he's much more likely to pardon people like Eastman and Giuliani and things like that if those guys go down, right? Like he had no problem in pardoning Roger Stone, for instance, right? But I think sort of like the thugs on the ground, like, nah. You think he's gonna Stuart Rhodes? He don't give a fuck about Stuart Rhodes. Absolutely not. I think he'd be like, who's this dork with one eye? Like, he just make fun of him. Like, I don't think he would give a shit. I really don't. So we'll see. I mean, Joseph Biggs came out and was like, absolutely, Trump's gonna fucking pardon us if he gets back in power. And it was interesting because he called from jail to do like an interview with like InfoWars, where it's like, you have 1 minute left, which was just hilarious. But when you listen to that call, one of the things I noticed that he does is he goes, well, if Trump gets, and he catches himself and doesn't say elected. He says, well, if he gets back in power, then, he'll I think he'll pardon us. Like, I think they are still banking on this idea of some sort of like, I don't know, like, I don't know, sort of like outsized kind of situation that Trump gets back in power. I think that they truly believe democracy doesn't exist and that Trump wouldn't be allowed to win an election. I think Trump would absolutely be allowed to win an election if he could. I don't think that he will, but
that's really the moral of the story is I hope we don't have to worry about this at all. So
yeah, well, obviously. Now I will say this: the part of the story that I think has like larger implications is that Tarrio was given 22 years and he wasn't there, and so he did not serve as sort of like Joseph Biggs was considered like tip of the spear kind of guy. Like, he was, Pizzola was like the first person in. Like, these guys were like literally physically breaking into the building, physically harming people, like physically there. Where Tarrio wasn't. I think people, these people who are implicated, and Donald Trump, who was indicted for January 6th and stuff like that, that didn't do the sort of violence and stuff like that, but were kind of tangentially a part of this, they should be worried. Because if you can catch these guys if you can catch Tarrio on this idea of being a general in a different city and making phone calls and putting the sort of chess pieces in place to allow this to happen, you can very well make that argument about Donald Trump. You can very well make that argument about a Rudy Giuliani or Mark Meadows, or, like, you can make those arguments about those guys because they are quite literally just doing the background conspiracy work. And if this doesn't worry them, it should. Like, I would legitimately, those other guys, like, oh yeah, those guys are definitely going to get arrested. Those guys are definitely going to get indicted and found guilty for what they did. But the guy who was just sitting in a hotel room, making phone calls, yeah, it should concern you. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the other reason that the guys at the top should be concerned is because, unlike these idiots, who still are, hanging on to these delusions, most of the people helping Trump are not like true believers. Like, even Eastman's not like Eastman's the one that came up with the scheme, and he knew it was bullshit. He's
been saying some
things
wild
that he said.
Shit during interviews.
I mean, even in stuff that he said before, like in stuff that we saw in text messages and things like that. Like, he knew it was like a big swing that was unlikely to succeed, but he still went ahead and did anyway, which is the crime.
Yeah, I mean, he all but admitted, like, yeah, this is kind of a crime, but I actually disagree with you. He actually is so much of a true believer that he was kind of like, but we should do this anyway, because like the other option is that Joe Biden becomes president, and that's just untenable. It's like, no, that's not how democracy works, my dude. Like, you can't just be like, well, let's just cheat anyway, just because I don't like the other guy.
Yeah, but do you think Eastman, like, is a dude that's going to believe in his scruples enough to fucking go to the mats for for Donald Trump if he has a chance to bargain his way to a lighter sentence?
I don't think so. I don't think so. No, I think once that water hits that ship, the rats will be running the fuck out of there. Is what I think is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think that's what they're banking on, right? There's a reason why you have, at least in Georgia, that you have Trump and Eastman and like look at who's being indicted. You got Trump, Eastman, Cheesebro, Sidney Powell, like, and then it starts to go to like the fake elector folks. Like they know exactly what the tiers are, right? They know the fake elector people are the ones who are going to roll first. They're just regular people like, yo, I don't want to be anywhere near this shit. Please just let me go home. They're the first ones to recant. They're the first ones to roll on everybody else. Then it goes up to, you know, the Sidney Powells and the Cheese Bros. And it's like, you start to put pressure on those people. Look, Cheese Bros like, hey man, can we just sever my case? Like, I don't fucking need to be here. And Sidney Powell's like, hey, I'm a lunatic. I'd like to also sever my case. Can I like do my case? And today, the federal judge was like, or the Georgian judge was like, no, you're all involved. Fuck off. You're like, we're not severing your cases. So like, they're the next step, then you get into the Giulianis and the Trumps and so on and so forth.
We can I mean it's funny because like their whole kind of fucking premise was like, well, we need to be able to sever, and the judge's like, why? And they're like, well, being next to these people make us look really guilty, and I think we'll look less guilty if we have our own trial. And they're just like, yeah, it's not a reason to sever a trial, buddy. Sorry.
No, either you're innocent or you're not. Like, isn't that how you guys talk about the justice system, right? Like it's all black and white. Like that's how it works. And it's like, except it's not. So, look, I love it. I'm glad that they are being put under pressure. Like that sounds great to me. But you know, we'll see. Well, we shall see what happens. But I would be concerned if I were Trump and Eastman and those guys who didn't do the actual violence. I'd be concerned because if they can grab one general, you're an even bigger general. Like you're a bigger target. And I think if I'm Fani Willis and her team, taking down somebody like John Eastman is almost a guarantee to get Trump. Like if you can get him to break, or you can pin it on him hard to the point where he's like, I'm willing to, you know, do some level of cooperation, or you know, or it's just sort of a one-to-one. It's like clearly Eastman was involved. Eastman was taking orders from Trump. Fucking roll it up, right? Like if you, I'll say this: if you can get Cheesebro or Sidney Powell, if you can flip either one of them to cooperate, these guys are fucked. These guys are fucked. And
I think Meadows is the holy grail for flipping. Like I think he's above them. He's above them. I know, but I'm saying like he seems to me someone who would be primed to do it, especially if he fails 100%. To like, you know, get into federal court and stuff like that. So that's who I would be trying to go after. Like Mark, like when you signed up for this, like, did you really picture yourself here? Like, you really want to go to jail for this fucking guy? Like, is that what you want to do?
Absolutely not, dude. Mark Meadows isn't built for that. He don't want to go to jail for 20 years. Like, get the fuck out of here. He will flip and like ride off in the sunset and never to be heard from again in a New York second. Like there is an exactly a 0% chance that he's the type of guy who goes to the mattresses for Trump. 0%. No. I mean, like, Republicans right now are like, in general, are just kind of like, they're already wavering, right? Raffensperger was like,
they're waiting. They're going to wait and see. They're going to wait and see. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's funny. I saw I didn't read the entire op-ed, but there was a title that I thought was amusing where it's like, you know, Trump's troubles being a distraction or only a distraction for Republicans. And we're like, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Like Democrats ain't worried about that shit at all. We're just letting it play out.
Yeah. Like good. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah, I agree with you though. Meadows would be he's a top tier one. He's a top dog because he has everything. Like he's the connection between Trump and your Sidney Powells and all those nutty lawyers and everything else. You know, so we'll see. We'll see. I mean, he cooperated seemingly, and then he was like, I'm done cooperating. They were like, you're not done by damn sight, son. Like, get back over here. And he's like, shit. They find out? Yeah, we found out. So yeah, we'll see. I'm going to skip this next story. Truth Social is likely going to, they weren't sure if Truth Social was going to die out. You know, actually, let's stick on this story for a second. So there was talk that Truth Social was possibly going to die because they had this sort of merger that they did. TMTG, which is Trump Media and Technology Group, was merged with Digital World Acquisition Corporation, right? And they were supposed to DWAC was supposed to take. Yeah, I know, it's fucking ridiculous. They were supposed to basically take Truth Social public, right? So they could all these people could make all this money and everything else. Well, they've had to postpone a number of times to do this, right? Like you get so many like 6 months or something, and they keep postponing it like a year after year after year to get a full merger between these two companies. And that costs money, right? It costs a lot of money. And so the talk was that perhaps they weren't going to be able to get another extension, but they just got the extension, right? It's for another year. However, I do want to talk about this a little bit, which is Trump's big problem right now going into this election is that he is on an island. Trump supporters go to Truth Social to listen to him rant and rave. Apparently he did like 31 clips, individual videos in one day. It was like 30 or 31.
We didn't play him. I think we talked about him last week.
No.
But yes, that was the whole thing where he said where he talked about like Joe Biden's a Manchurian candidate. Oh no, I joked with you guys. That's right. I was like, I wonder how many times he had to practice saying.
Yeah, he'd say he was a Manchurian candidate. 100. There's no way he pronounced that word correctly the first time. Also, he's never seen any of those versions of that movie. They're all good. So he's on an island, right? He's got his people who go there. They listen to his fucking bullshit, and they're like, "We love you, Trump." They go to his rallies, everything. But one of the ways that he won and got out his poisonous message in 2016 and in 2020 was that he was on Twitter, and he was on Facebook. Having Truth Social is hurting him, right? Because Truth Social, I think it says, has like 16 million members, where Twitter has like 84 million, right? It's like, it's just not even close to the same base. Now, of course, a lot of Trump supporters on Twitter were bots and things like that. So you don't know what's the one-to-one. But whenever he tweeted something, it would just go fucking nuclear all over Twitter, right? Whether you followed him or not, you heard about it. So unless you had him like actively blocked, but even still, it fucking permeated your brain, like. Well,
and even people who hated him would still like quote tweet so they could comment on the things that he was saying,
right?
And stuff like that.
Right, so, which is a fucking problem, right? So all of that being said, I feel like he needs to get off. I feel like he's going to want to get off of Truth Social, right? He's tweeted once, I think, on Twitter, but he's going to want to go back and get that fucking crowd revved up again, right? Like, but every time he does, it's going to steal away from his own product, right? So it's interesting because that's where the businessman versus the politician, they're literally at odds with each other, because you quite literally are going to be politically hurt by not using this competitor's product because it is superior. So what are your thoughts on that?
I honestly, I kind of want the insanity to come back to mainstream and social media, because remember in 2016, it's hard to kind of separate in your brain what kind of time 2016 was compared to where we are now. Because again, in 2016, Trump was in many ways politically an unknown commodity, and there was enough people who couldn't see the signs and were willing to fucking roll the dice on him because they hated Hillary Clinton that much or whatever the reason is, or they wanted a quote unquote outsider to come in and shake up DC or whatever, whatever fucking dumb reasons they used to justify voting for him. And in 2020, part of the reason that he lost is because he was the president. And so every dumb thing that he said or did, like encouraging people to inject bleach into themselves to cure the COVID, to cure themselves of COVID,
is there any way we can get it inside the body? Oh my god!
Yeah, or making public odes to Kim Jong-un and things of that nature, like all this shit. Like people saw that front and center, and it turns out when you let Trump be Trump and when you let him kind of do his thing, people don't really like him very much. So I think the more exposure he has and the more his message goes out completely unfiltered, because again, remember, like you and I and people listening to this show are in many ways the bizarre version of like the right wing people that those messages are intended for. Because like they're not intended for us, they disgust us, but we understand like the dumb shit that he's talking about because we're broken brain people with this stuff. But like normal voters would like hear half of that shit that he was saying and they're just like, what the fuck is this guy's fucking problem? Like I just want him to talk about how he's going to help curb inflation, or I want to hear about how he's going to help push down prescription drug prices or fix the bridge in my town. Like why the fuck is he talking about fucking, like in all this shit. So yeah, like I hope he does get back on Twitter or X or what have you, and Facebook, and just let that shit rock, man. Just let just take those videos you put on True Social and just put them out there for the masses, and just let him talk about whatever nonsense he wants to talk about, and let people see that shit so they can be reminded that, oh, that's right, that guy's a psychopath. And we shouldn't elect him to be president again, even though we don't really care for Joe Biden. We're certainly not going to let this guy fucking back in the mix.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with that, right? Like this, it's a double-edged sword, right? He is going to reach more people. He is going to convince more people that he's the right candidate. However, you know what he is? He, besides many things that are probably not okay to say in front of children, he's a human version of an attack ad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Attack ads are super effective at taking someone down, right? Like if you get a really good attack ad and you're like, this person did X, Y, and Z, and you're like, oh shit, they fucking exposed them. But the more attack ads you do, while you're pulling your opponent down in a political race, the more attack ads you do, the more your unfavorables go up, right? As much as America loves a fighter and all this other shit, people don't like a dick. Like they're like, all right, punch him once, relax. But the problem is you got to punch him once and you go, I got a shot in, and then you got to hit him again, and you got to hit him again and again. But you understand they don't that your unfavorables will go up. And for him,
they don't want that to be your only message.
Exactly.
You have to attack somebody to point out why they're bad, but you also need to talk about why you're good. Here's my question to you. Like you say, it's a double-edged sword, right? Of having him be more exposed and stuff like that. Please tell me the justification for the Biden Trump voter, like voted for Trump in 2016, switched to Biden in 2020, back to Trump in 2024. What is that voter? What is their mindset? What is their reasoning for like?
Oh, this is easy, bro.
Yeah,
Biden's too old. Trump's young, virile, if you will. Young. He's a young stud. There isn't a logical Trump Biden Trump voter. Like it doesn't make any sense unless you're just sort of brainwashed into thinking, and I don't want to say brainwashed. That feels overly mean. Brain dead into thinking like that.
I feel like that's meaner than brainwashed, but okay.
No, I know. It wasn't mean enough. That's how it should be. Brainwash wasn't mean enough. No, but if you're brain dead enough to think that them attacking Trump, or, you felt like you voted for Biden, but then you saw how illegal you've been convinced that the votes were illegal after the fact. Then you're like, well, Trump got a raw deal, but I liked him, but I didn't think he did so good with COVID, but COVID's over now. So like before COVID, he was a great president. Like you could justify, like do some sort of weird, justification in your mind like that. It doesn't actually make any sense. Right. But,
I don't think anyone that voted for
sense.
Biden, I don't think anyone that voted for Biden in 2020 thought Trump was a great president. I'd be hard pressed to find a single Biden voter who said, man, Trump did a great job up until February 2020 and then shit the bed. Because if you think Trump did a great job, chances are you probably got COVID and died anyway. So,
okay, fair enough.
Yeah, because you didn't get a vaccine.
Yeah, no, well, I mean,
yeah,
I'm still sucking down ivermectin, waiting for it to take place.
Is it normal to shit my pants in the middle of a grocery store?
That fucking tweet was amazing. yeah. No, you'll be fine. That's totally normal.
But no, I think if you're a Trump voter and then you switch to Biden in 2020, like you're either voting for Biden again or you're not voting at all. I think those are probably the two alternatives. And people are like, oh, they'll vote for a third party. You know why people don't vote for third parties? Because again, we take for granted how much people want to vote for something. And when you're voting for a third party, you're not voting for anything. You're filing a protest vote.
Yeah, that's it.
So.
Like, and you could say, no, I really believe the things the Green Party says. So I'm not disagreeing with that. Like, you can. But you and I both know, or all three of us here know, you're going to lose. Your candidate is not going to win, and you are voting as a protest vote. And look, that's fine for you. I'm not going to say it's fine because I believe in community, and I think you should do
it's
better
not fine.
Things.
It's not fine for you. It's not fine at all.
For them. If that's, look, again, if that's what you want to believe, that Joe Biden should drop out so that, what's his face? Cornel West can win, right? If you believe that nonsense, then that's fine for you to believe. I don't agree with you. I think that's madness, frankly. But I don't. But again, and I've talked about this in the past. I'm a black man. I can't afford to vote without collectively thinking about others, because my people did not survive through. We just talked about some black on black cinema. We didn't survive through rugged individualism. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. You need community to survive. And so you have to think about others when you're voting. And I do. Even if certain things don't affect me. Hey, man, I don't have a uterus. Me and my wife are not having any kids. Any more kids, right? But I still think about abortion rights. I still think about women's right to choose. It's still a major thing that I keep on my plate when I go to vote, right? Even though it does not affect me. So, so on and so forth, right? So yeah, we'll see what he does with Twitter. My guess is he's got to come back. He's got to come back because he's got.
I think there's no doubt about it. I think that whoever's running his campaign, if he is the nominee, will basically put it out there point blank. Even if he doesn't post on there, they're going to run ads on it regardless. So
yeah, I'd be shocked if he didn't. I really would. But again, he's a human attack ad. So the more he's out there, like you said, the more people are going to remember. Yeah, fuck this guy. No thanks, right? And I think a lot of the sort of Democratic Party rhetoric, Joe Biden is so old and Joe Biden isn't doing this, blah, blah, blah. And I think people have forgotten just how bad Trump was, because
also just how old Trump is,
right?
I truly hope that if they run against each other, because somebody's going to fucking some dumb moderator in a debate is going to ask Joe Biden, people are concerned about your age. Do you think they're right to be concerned? And I fucking hope Joe Biden says, hey, Jack, Casey, you realize that the dude right next to me is only 2 years younger than I am. And in a lot worse shape, by the way. So
Trump is whoa. I'm built like an NFL quarterback. Relax.
Yeah, if you're gonna ask Biden the age question, then how the fuck aren't you gonna ask Trump the age question as well? Because I'm sorry, there's not a huge gulf of difference between a pretty still seems to be with it 82 and a dementia-addled 80-year-old.
No, No, there's literally no difference, Brad. We shouldn't talk about nuance at all. Like none, zero. Like, why? That's stupid. Next up, I'm very interested to see what he does with social media. I really am, because it should make a big difference. Look, man, if you don't understand or you're not aware of, I shouldn't say understand, but if you're not aware of Project 2025, you need to make yourself very aware of it. This is a terrifying thing that Republicans are working on. Apparently, a dark right-wing network recruits a MAGA army to replace 50,000 federal workers that Trump plans to purge, right? So the Associated Press had this interesting story, and this one is in Salon. It goes a little bit deeper. Organized by the Heritage Foundation, a sweeping new initiative called Project 2025 offers a policy agenda, transition plan, a playbook for the first 180 days, and a personnel database for the next GOP president to access from the very beginning to take control, reform, and eliminate what Republicans criticize as the deep state bureaucracy. Their plans include the possibility of firing as many as 50,000 federal employees. And replacing them with sort of MAGA loyalists is the part to understand here. This isn't just about Trump. This is about Republicanism, period. This is about fascism, arguably, right? These people want to get rid of 50,000 federal employees because they think they're a part of the deep state, right? The amount of brain drain that you would have by firing 50,000 federal employees is insane, right? And look, I know people think that like everyone who works in the federal government is like sitting on their laurels and they're all stupid and they're just sucking money down, waiting for retirement or whatever. It's not true. It's not true. I personally used to work in a federal building for a number of years, over like almost 2 decades, right, as a consultant. And I can tell you, working with many federal employees, there are a lot of really brilliant fucking people. And these are people I worked in the science portion of the government. These people are not bureaucrats. Like these people are not like, well, what about fucking Al Gore's, blah, 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 and fuck Republicans. Like, no, they were just doing their job, right? Fucking science, right? It's not whether COVID's real or anything like that. Like, hey man, we should probably try to solve Parkinson's. Like, shit everyone can agree are good things. But if you just come in and just fire these people or fire these manager level people just so you can have a bunch of Trump loyalists, you're going to destroy this country. Like people don't realize how much the federal government actually does to kind of keep this country afloat in many serious ways.
Not just even afloat, but advancing, like moving forward. Like it's not just treading water and maintaining status quo. Yeah, I think people that aren't keyed in don't realize how much worse the Trump presidency could have been, but for the fact that most of the people that are pulling the levers and turning the dials in our federal government are like the career people, the people that don't change when there's a new presidential administration from a different party that's coming in. And to your point, like firing a ton of these people and they would do it by basically putting a executive order in place that would make all federal employees like at will, meaning that you can, fire them and like they're not like contracted or, things like that. That would, just to echo what you're saying, like that would be very bad. And especially if you're putting people in place who are ideologically simpatico with like the worst of Republican politics, essentially. And that's another reason why, generally for the career folks, it doesn't matter what party you are, you uphold an oath to do the job that's assigned to you.
Exactly.
And these people that would be coming in, probably if they're being recruited and they're, basically you have what's equivalent to like a Federalist Society for government workers,
Dude.
would not adhere to the same principles. I feel so.
Right. And look, it's this from a party that made an entire campaign slogan off of draining the swamp. Like,
well, every confession or every
accusation.
what's the phrase? Yeah, every accusation is a confession. So
right, we need to drain the swamp so we can fill it with a bunch of gators that we've bred from every college around the country. Right, so it's terrifying, and it's yet another reason to not want Trump to get back in power. It's also yet another reason to keep Republicans out of power. Period.
Yeah. And again,
it doesn't matter who wins. They're just like, if a Republican wins, this is the fucking plan. Let's fucking go.
And if you want a microcosm of what that would look like, just look no further than the current federal judicial system, where we have these insane rulings being handed out by lower courts and insane rulings being handed out by a conservative majority Supreme Court.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, man, this is scary shit. 50,000 employees is crazy, right? Like, we have things like USAID, which does like outreach to other countries and helps them, like build up like small countries that are, need water and electricity and stuff like that. I had a friend who worked there. Like, that's what they do. They're like, hey, we're going to Belize and try to build this water system for them so they can, so we can bring them up. Like, just to help them in the world. Like, there's no like necessarily ulterior motive besides saying like, hey, America helped you. Like, like, hey, like, we're cool, right? Like, maybe if you have some resources down the line, like maybe we can have a conversation, right? But that's understandable shit, right? Like, that's how negotiations work. That's how countries get along. There's a give and take, right? Under these guys, shit like USAID would be eliminated. Why are we helping foreigners, right? America first, right? Like, those are not good things. That helps to isolate the country. That America first shit isolates the country. That's not good. Again, the theme here across apparently all of our podcasts this week is rugged individualism does not work, right? And republicanism is steeped in that shit. And this type of thing will only go to make those things deeper entrenched in America, making America worse. Right? You think the mail system is fucked? Wait till you see when all the major federal agents in the post office are all Republican ideologues who don't want mail-in voting. So they'll just fuck the systems up even further. Like Louis DeJoy is still in that position because they still have not gotten him out. Imagine 20 of those guys.
It's because they have bigger fish to fry right now. So,
right. But you know what I mean? Like, imagine all these guys at the FBI or CIA or DOJ. Are you kidding me? Like, these are the same people. Like, they would put people in place that think that what happened on January 6th was totally fine.
And again, not just at the head of those organizations, which are appointed positions, but they would be bringing in people doing the rank and file work.
Right. Yeah. And that's terrifying. Right? Like, remember, there were already conversations about how the FBI branch in New York was all like really like pro-Trump. There was like so many people who were pro-Trump and all this other shit. And so they were doing like kind of shady shit to sort of bolster him and stuff like that. Imagine that's everywhere. Because these are Trump loyalists, or these are Republican loyalists. These are the same people who also believe in that sort of unilateral executive theory, right? Which is you just cede all the power to the president. Like, that's
like I said, ultimately that's how you end up with like, totalitarian rule, essentially, is when, when one party controls all the levers of government, not just the high positions, but all throughout, and you have no one to resist the direction coming from up top, then that's when you're fucked. So,
yep. So this would be the end of democracy as you know it. So Project 2025, this is enough of a reason why I cannot listen to people give, and I don't mean to harp too much on this person because I think so very little of them politically. That's why I don't have time for like these bullshit bad faith arguments. And like, I just don't have time for it because shit like this really matters. And thinking that someone like Cornel West could stop that is fucking ridiculous to me. Right?
Here's what I'll tell you.
Shit is not serious to me.
I will make a ploy to all of you listeners, and you can remind me of this as we get closer to the election. What I simply want you to do when we get closer to the election, if you have a friend or family member who is considering voting third party and they tell you this, I want you to respond to them with this phrase and this phrase only: knock it the fuck off.
Yeah, agreed.
Get your point across.
Yeah, like democracy is way too tenuous at this point to be fucking around. You want to vote for Cornel West when like things are fine and you're like, hey, I want to see what's gonna happen. Like I know nothing's gonna happen like actually, but like I'll try and see. Nah, now's not the time. This is serious. Project 2025 is fucking serious. And I know where they would make the argument of, well, that's scaremongering, Jay. You're scaring people into doing these things. No, this isn't scaremongering. These are things they would actually do. Republicans don't joke when it comes to, hey, we'll fuck democracy up. Like, they're not kidding about that. Like, Democrats are like, here's our plans. We'd like to do that. Maybe we'll have a chance to, blah, 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 blah. Republicans are very serious about this. They'll do this shit. You thought they were kidding? You thought they were joking about abortion? Look where you are. They weren't joking. When they got the power, they did it. They didn't think about it.
That's really the wake-up call that everyone needs to that there you go. You can add that phrase to the first. Hey, remember you thought the same shit with abortion? Knock it the fuck off.
Yeah.
And then
they'll
that's
never do that.
So.
Yeah. No, but they will though. But they will. If they like when someone tells you who they are, believe them. Like, believe them. We're going to fire 50,000 federal employees. I actually don't believe you. I think it'll be more than that. So, no, thank you. Like, I don't trust you. Get the fuck out of here. So, I mean, you've got Vivek talking about, I'd get rid of the CIA and the FBI. I just get rid of it. I just get rid of all of it. Have you ever read that one book where people in the FBI were really corrupt and like real pieces of shit? Remember Martin Luther King? They were terrible. Yeah, no, I remember that. You remember how like those guys work in like tandem with each other? That's the thing.
I love how he's quoting. Well, I love how in that specific example, the book he's talking about was written by arguably the guy that was like the most corrupt. And yet, like he's talking about like a book that was written by J. Edgar Hoover. Like, come on, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, but you know, they were corrupt, and you know they tried to get Martin Luther King Jr. to commit suicide. Yeah, we know all this, Vivek. I know you just read up on this in the last 6 months because you were doing your fucking your bro book report on trying to become president. But like, we're all aware of this. That doesn't equal that the FBI didn't go and do 1,000 arrests and grab all these motherfuckers for January 6th. Like, it doesn't mean like because they did something terrible back then that they have no worth at all now. That's simply not true. It is an unbelievably ignorant thing to say, right? Should they have overhaul? Should they be, have people come in and, checks and balances and stuff like that? Undoubtedly. Do I think you should get rid of the FBI? No, I don't. I think that's very silly. What the fuck are you talking about? To quote Brad, knock it the fuck off, right? Like those kind of things are silly.
Also, again, as pretty much everything, like anything Vivek Ramaswamy says, should be the follow-up question for anything. Explain how. Explain how that's going to happen.
Oh, I got a doozy of a Vivek story this week.
I can't wait.
And it's not even the one where he's getting dunked on by Mehdi Hassan in many clips from that interview, which I need to watch in full. Dude, you can't go on Mehdi Hassan's show. Dude, he has receipts. He brings receipts. Like, you can't be like, Mehdi Hassan quoted me incorrectly. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. No, he didn't.
It's really bad when you're like, you're misquoting me, and Mehdi Hassan's like, I'm going to put the quote on the screen because it's from a fucking tweet.
Yeah, he's like,
here you go.
Put it up right here. It's like, fuck.
You forgot who you were
try my
with.
trick again.
Next, I hope he does a sit down on camera interview with Jonathan Swan. I think that'll be pretty great as well.
Do not recommend. Would love to see it. Do not recommend. Vivek, if you really think that you could handle a Jonathan Swan interview, by all means, please call him up. Can you just tell us where to watch?
Dude,
I would.
Here's how you know Vivek is not a serious guy, because I've seen TikTok clips of him getting railroaded in an interview with fucking Bill Maher. And Bill Maher has fallen far from grace at this point in terms of being able to hold people's feet to the fire.
Dude, Bill Maher had the weirdest week, I think, in his career, where he goes viral for schooling idiot Joe Rogan on like, yeah, man, Trump's bad, like real bad. Here's all the things that he's bad about. Joe Rogan's like, DMT, UFC, sidekick, DMT, ankle lock. Thanks for coming. Right, that's my impression of Joe Rogan. Then he was on, I guess, his show or whatever fucking thing he's got going on because he doesn't have writers, and it's just him like drinking scotch and smoking cigars with random people, and he had Vivek on, but he had what's that comedian Jim Gaffigan, where he's like, yeah, I don't know, man, like these writers, do they deserve a living wage? And Jim Gaffigan's like, yeah, what? Yeah, no, I think they do. It's like Jim Gaffigan's like the ultimate nice guy. It's like, no, I think you should help people, man. Like, what the fuck is going on right now? But like, Bill Maher's an asshole. Like, he can't help himself. So yeah, look, Vivek is not a serious candidate. Like, he's not. And again, this week I will prove it because there is a wonderfully wonderful fucking story about this guy's opinion on something that it just doesn't make sense. It just ideologically it's not consistent, which is a shocker. Next up, two stories back to back. Federal court rejects Alabama's gerrymandered.
Didn't we already do this?
No, this is no. Yes, we did.
Yeah, I know. Like, I'm being facetious. Like, I know we already did this,
yes.
And the Supreme Court already told them to fix it, and apparently the fucking Alabama legislature just handed them a big middle finger.
Yeah,
and
they came back a second time. Yeah, they came back a second time. They're like, "This is better." They're like, "No, dude, what?
You didn't do what they told you to do.
Right,
like you literally did. They said create a second district that's majority black, and you didn't do it."
And they're like, "What if we don't and say that we did?" Is that possible? Like, that's not possible.
But again, we talked about this when the decision was handed down, and Alabama was like, "Yeah, we're not going to do that." What's the enforcement mechanism? And again, if Republicans want to play the game of we're just not going to listen to what the Supreme Court says, by all means, like I can't wait to fucking start playing that game. Are you kidding me? It's going to be awesome. Anarchy.
Let's do it. Like, it's amazing how they were just like, could you just do that? Like, them's the rules. And they were like, no. How about we don't?
For again, a seat that, well, it may matter. It may matter in 2024 because the House might be pretty tightly contested. But in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't fucking matter.
It's one district. Like, it's one.
It's a gimme.
Yeah.
It's a gimme. But again, if they want to be the raptor hitting the fence and find out that it's not electrified, and they just want to outwardly ignore the Supreme Court,
by all means.
You sure about that?
Yeah, exactly. Like that, you're setting a weird precedent, and if the Supreme Court doesn't have anything to say about it, you're setting a weird precedent. Like, you really are. Because what happens when they don't do it, and then going into 2024, that map just exists? Like, what happens?
Yeah.
And they just fuck over black people. And like, was the Supreme Court going to say, what happened?
What happens if that's the case and control of the House is decided by one seat?
Oh, dude.
then how do you think Democrats in states are going to feel about like in Democratic states? Be like, oh, word, like, oh, we just don't have to listen to the Supreme Court anymore. Bet.
Yeah.
Let's fucking go, baby.
Yeah.
We can't prescribe methylprednisolone anymore. Says who? Who says we can't do it?
What are you gonna come down here, Clarence? Huh? You're gonna get your robe, get in your Corvette, and drive down. You're not gonna do shit. Yeah, we're giving it out at the schools now. Like, who cares?
We have to make guns available. We have to sell guns in our state. Says who? Says who? You, Supreme Court? Fuck off. Like, I can do what I want.
Like, what are you gonna do? Nothing. Shut the fuck up, Sam Alito. Get out of here. Beat it. In a similar story, a Florida judge on Saturday ruled that a congressional map put forward by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was unconstitutional and ordered the state legislature to redraw the boundaries. The circuit court judge, J. Lee Marsh, found that the redrawn districts authorized by DeSantis in northern Florida violated the state's Constitution Fair Districts Amendment by, quote, dismantling a congressional district that enabled what kind of voters? Black voters, of course, to elect their candidate of choice under the previous plan. And of course, when it was before they redrew it, in the previous district, 46.5% of the voting age population was in fact black. Under the new map, the 4 districts in the area are 23.1, 15.9, 31.7, and 12.8% black. Just enough to lose to white people in every single district. Of course.
You know what would actually be like a cool constitutional amendment that I still don't think you would get enough support for, but it would be cool to do. How about we make it a requirement that state district, like federal districts, are drawn by independent, nonpartisan committees,
robots.
And that has to be
robots,
right?
Just robots,
exactly.
Robots, not a human being at all. Robots, because look, humans are corruptible, right? Like like you get a. I don't even know who you get. Like you get fucking Google to do it or something like that, and everybody agrees. Like just have fucking conservative tech dorks and liberal tech dorks all look at the programming, make sure it's all public and everything else. And they go, all right, fucking type it into ChatGPT, draw up these districts so that it's a, fair representation for Republicans and Democrats and it doesn't look too wild and blah, blah, blah. All that shit, however they come up with it, and it's drawn across the country. It should never be to the whims of human beings because it does not work. It is prime for gerrymandering and fucking over people who do not want to vote for you.
Again, color they are. I live in a heavily gerrymandered state.
Yeah, you do.
For Democrats. But again, we criticize them because again, to fight gerrymandering, Jay and I have long advocated fight fire with fire. That's and right. If they want to gerrymander red states, gerrymander the fuck out of blue states and watch them cry. They could have drawn a Maryland map that was eight districts blue and no red, even though if you understand the demographics of the state of Maryland would be utterly ridiculous.
Yes. But
they didn't because they're foolish. But yeah, like Maryland arguably should have at least 3 Republican districts. Like 3 is probably the right number based on how the population shakes out.
3 or 4. If we're being honest, like there is a lot. Look, I grew up in Maryland. There's a lot of Maryland that's pretty goddamn red, man. It's like once you leave the city and then like near DC, Wacomico.
Well, that's the thing. The whole Baltimore to DC corridor is firmly blue.
Yep.
And the rest of the state is actually quite red. It's just that it happens to be in that Baltimore DC corridor. That's where all the people actually live.
Yes,
so that's why it's such a blue state. So
yeah. But that's true, and that's true in a lot of places, right? Like there's a lot of places that are like these, and that's when Republicans are always like, look at this map, look at all the red. It's like no one lives in any of that red, dude. Everyone lives in this blue, like New York, for instance. It's a prime example. Not that New York is a super red state, but there's a lot of New York that's red. It's just that, I don't know, 8 million New Yorkers live in New York City. So it's a little hard for you as a person who lives in fucking, I don't know, fucking wherever in New York, one of those other fucking shitty places no one goes to, Ithaca, right? Like, which I actually think is kind of like a bluish little town, but
it's a college town.
Yeah, it's a college town. That's where the movie Road Trip took place. That's the only reason why I ever know about Ithaca. And those guys got crazy. But
how about Utica? How about Utica?
I'll burn Utica to the ground. But
it's more of a Utica expression.
Oh, Michael Scott. But like those kind of places are super, super red. But because New York City is so fucking blue, like, who gives a shit? Nobody cares. Like, that's where people want to live, man. People want to live in the cities. I know Republicans don't think so. They all want to live 50 miles away from their next door neighbor, but like most people don't. Like they like seeing people. So yeah, this is fucked up. But again, Florida and Alabama, they really can't help but to disenfranchise black voters. And I once again I ask, why on earth, as a black person, would you want to be on that team? They literally don't want people who look like you to vote. They just literally don't. It's not even about like working hard, blah, blah, blah. They just don't want their vote to count.
They're trying to make it so they don't really care if you vote. They just don't want you to have any representation. That's what it really boils down to. Like, yeah, vote if you want to, but it's gonna, that doesn't count. I mean, it's not gonna matter.
Like, yeah, vote for who you want, but you're still getting Whitey McWhite. That's what you're getting. Sorry. Like, no thanks. No thanks. Brad, I know you're excited about this next story. I even put a little strikeout. I got a little crazy on the formatting. I said, is the GOAT, and then I scratched that out, Toad, jumping into the race. Larry Hogan, former governor of Maryland, says that he has not, quote, closed the door to running for president under a no labels ticket. Okay. Republican Larry Hogan, the no labels guy. Republican Larry Hogan, the former Maryland governor, told Face the Nation that he hasn't closed the door on this. Quote, if I believe that we can actually win the race, we might have to pull out something that's never been done. No Labels is a political organization that promotes bipartisanship in government, which is a fucking waste of time. In 2017, it helped organize Problem Solvers Caucus. Go ahead.
That's a really nice way to say that No Labels is actually more of a bastion for Republicans who can't bear to call themselves Republicans anymore because of the guy that isn't in charge of their party. And also for Democrats who think that Democrats are like the party of AOC, when in reality, they're still very much like the party of the neoliberals in many ways. But, people like Joe Manchin are like, no, like it's different now. And we're like, no, it's really not, Joe. Like you're just the last of a dead breed. So,
oh boy! Like no labels.
This would be the third party. This would be the third party ticket. Like anyone No Labels runs would be the third party ticket that I would be concerned about, because again, like that to me feels like a permission structure for people that really don't want to vote for Joe Biden, but also really don't want to vote for Donald Trump. And there's enough of those people out there that if they voted for a No Labels candidate, of course the No Labels candidate would come nowhere near enough votes to win any electoral votes, but it would skew things in close states enough to make the actual presidential election a bit of a crapshoot, which would be bad.
Yeah, but to your point, No Labels is likely a bastion for Republicans who are too scared to call themselves Republicans anymore, which is fucking understandable. So I think it's more likely to pull votes from a Trump or whatever the Republican candidate is. But at the same time, would it make that much of a difference? Because honestly, those people aren't going to vote for him anyway.
Well, it's hard to say, because again, most third-party candidates come from the extremes on the political divides, whereas this would be a candidacy firmly in between them, and I think that would be a big difference in terms of how many people. Like, I think a No Labels candidate could do better than a Green Party or a Libertarian candidate could.
Yeah,
by a wide margin. Yep. My only fear is like,
well, they would have a serious candidate. They would have a serious candidate.
Cornel West is not a serious candidate, and
Cornel West is not a serious candidate for president. He's not.
Right. And again, my fear is that, again, people that are going to vote for Trump are going to vote for Trump anyway. I'm pretty sure that if you were a Trump voter at this point, that is your guy through thick and thin. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of Republicans who voted for Biden in the last election just because of what Trump represented that would not feel good about doing it again. Like they held their nose and did it the first time. Yeah, and but
That's
if they had an alternative candidate, even though if they were smart, they would realize that, you know, to quote Kang, go ahead, you know, throw your vote away, voting for a third party candidate. But I think that having someone like Larry Hogan out there for these people would create that permission structure for them to do that.
That's fair. That's fair.
Okay, that's the end of the free portion for this week's episode of Look Forward. Make sure you go to lookforwardshow.com/premium. Sign up for premium content. It's only $5 a month or $50 for the full year.